you define technical communication? What's the essence of the field, right?
You are watching Exploring Technical Communication, a documentary that seeks to answer the question, what is technical communication? Hi, my name is Eric Willis, and I'm an undergraduate at the University of Washington. Over the next half hour, we're going to go on a short journey. We're going to get to know a few of the people who make a difference in the field of technical communication. We're going to examine the history of technical communication, and we're going to explore the various aspects and its wealth of opportunities. Finally, we're going to look to the future of the profession. And by the end of this study, we're going to have a decisive answer to the question, what is technical communication? So let's begin by getting to know a few of the people who make technical communication exactly what it is.
Technical communication is more than computer documentation. If you go to the STC website and look at the special interest groups, you'll see science writing, you'll see consulting, you'll see graphic design, you'll see information design, all sorts of different specialties.
Before we analyze the present, we must look into the past. The history of technical communication at the UW began in the early part of the 20th century.
The field actually started on its, what we tend to call its service side. And the service side is we serve engineers and technical professionals. Around the turn of the 20th century, around 1900, was when people were dissatisfied with the quality of engineering communication, of the way engineers wrote, and there started to appear courses, generally out of English departments, to teach technical writing.
It started with Amy Violet Hall.
Yeah, Amy Violet Hall, was that it?
Amy Violet Hall, who began teaching in the mid-1920s, began teaching courses for engineering students in the English department here on campus. She felt the engineers needed a better rounded education. So what she did is she devised a number of, quote, writing courses, unquote, in which they had to read in the humanities and social sciences, and they had to write papers for her.
In the United States in the Second World War was a largely agricultural country, but it drafted these largely non-industrial, non-city, non-urban, not very well literate American young GIs into a wide variety of tasks. And among the things that happened in the industrial production of the Second World War was the production of a series of things which needed regular maintenance and updating. Jeeps, machine guns, tanks of various kinds, all sorts of equipment, airplanes of various kinds. And that required the United States government to produce technical communication on how one is going to regularly maintain various pieces of equipment.
You had to tell these people what they were doing. And so there was all kinds of instructions, directions being written, and I think this is what gave technical communication a boost beyond with World War II.
The people who created the technology were the first candidates. They seemed to be the obvious people, but they turned out to be about the worst people to do it, partly because they understood it so well, they didn't have much sympathy for people who couldn't understand it, partly because they didn't really have the skills that were necessary, which were communication skills and other kinds of skills that weren't necessarily related to developing new technology, partly because they didn't think it was that important. I mean, they were important people because they developed new technology, not because they worried about if somebody with a fifth grade education could use it in the field.
After World War II, technical communication at the University of Washington appeared in the form of the Humanistic Social Studies Department.
Finally, in 1945-6, somewhere along there, the university agreed that, okay, you'll have a department. They decided that Amy ought to put together a new Humanistic Social Studies department. As the new HSS department developed, Amy was going out and hiring people. She hired me, she hired Jim Souther.
They were known for being among the first to actually go out in the field, go into an organization, and watch the way information flowed and watch how it was done. They didn't teach out of a textbook, or just from a textbook. They went out and got reality.
We wanted to get people who weren't engineers or didn't want to be engineers. We wanted to teach, because there are going to be plenty of these, we wanted to teach a professional program. And so we did. And it stayed here.
Well, among the things that were taught in that department was technical writing. But it was technical writing taught for engineering students. At that time, there was no career preparation for people who wanted to be technical writers. Most people in technical writing were English majors who were having trouble writing the great American novel, and teachers who had some expertise in technology but were burned out on teaching, or engineers who had a love of writing. But there really weren't places that formally prepared people to be technical writers.
We decided that we ought to carry it one step farther. We should establish a set of courses for people who wanted to make this a profession. And in 1974-75, that's what we did. We started such a program, very modest, believe me.
In I think it was 1979, when Paul Allen and Bill Gates founded Microsoft, there were, the Society for Technical Communication listed 19 academic programs in technical communication. Now they list something like 235.
Even today, when there are 200 technical communication programs worldwide, there's still only 2 or 3 actual departments of technical communication.
Eventually, the Technical Communication Department became more like what it is today.
Well, there's a lot of different people that come to the department from a lot of different places, not just geographically, but kind of different places in their life.
I was an English undergrad student, and I studied Japanese. It was a Japanese studies minor, and I wanted to do something where I combine English with computers or web-based design, web interface design, stuff like that. So it just seemed like a natural fit to have technical communication, because I was interested in communication. I did some journalism, stuff like that. Also with the Japanese, they have a really strong technical Japanese program here, so it seemed like something good to do.
We want the students to have hands-on education. We want them working on projects and building things and creating things.
Technical communication, for me, means that you're involved, as the department is now, in any number of aspects of communication that are related to the writing, to print, and now, of course, to the internet. It seems to me that if you're really going to communicate, you need to be involved in all of the aspects that the department gets you guys involved in now, and probably there's some more coming up. I mean, there's some more developments going to come.
As you know, the department is a writing-based program.
I mean, calculus is the foundation of being an engineer. It's like you just assume an engineer knows calculus. It's the basic language. For us, the foundation is actually is writing, is basic writing skills, and that's what we assume when someone comes into our major, but we don't assume calculus.
Communication takes many forms, and one of them is visual communication. How a person reads, interprets text, and sees color are a few forms of visual communication. A technical communicator who knows the principles of visual communication is an even more effective communicator.
There are just a variety of things that visuals are more effective and more efficient at conveying than words. Certainly, there are a lot of things that words are more efficient at conveying than pictures. Otherwise, we would speak in pictures and write in pictures, and we don't do that. We have a symbol system that uses 26 characters to represent something in the neighborhood of 40 to 44 phonemes, with which in various combinations we can represent all roughly 600,000 words in the English language. That's a fairly efficient system, so obviously pictures are not going to be a replacement for that kind of a writing system anytime soon. But there are certain kinds of things that pictures do much better.
Just as visual communication is communication through the eyes, rhetoric is communication through the heart and mind. Rhetoric is communication that persuades. Rhetoric began with the Greeks and is now regarded as part of technical communication today.
And the Greeks said there were three things that language could do. It can make true statements about the world. It can describe the way things are, and they worried about that, and they worried about language's ability. And how did you know if if this sentence was true and this sentence was true, then was this sentence true? And and that became logic. That was the field of logic. Came out of the language's ability to say true things or false things. And then there was language's ability to persuade. And that was, as I say, rhetoric, And the last one was language's ability to entertain, to move, and that was called poesy, right? And that's literature and fiction and stuff like that. We use rhetoric as a tool, just like we use writing as a tool, or web design, or Java as a tool, or whatever it is as a tool.
Rhetoric and the art of persuasion is often used by project managers in managing projects. The technical communicator must be able to manage his or her project to completion, meeting every deadline.
I think any professional technical communicator would tell you that one of the key skills is to be able to manage a project. Because what you are doing in your work life is you are producing information in parallel with the development of the product itself. So your information and the development of it has to articulate with the overall product development and plan for release of the product. And that means you've got to manage your resources so that everything comes out at the right point, at the right time, and your work has folded in well with that of everybody else on the team. So anytime you have a team effort, you have to know project management. And technical communication is definitely a team effort. So,
project managers often manage computer documentation teams. Computer documentation becomes more and more important as technology becomes more important in our society. Many technical communication graduates end up taking jobs documenting computer software.
Software documentation, computer documentation is very large, and probably half of our students go out of here into those kinds of jobs. We also have people who go into web design and web content creation, and sometimes those overlap. As we get into more and more diverse forms of computed communication, wireless phones, PDAs, web-enabled phones, all sorts of portable devices that people are using, embedded computing, when your car is going to talk to your house, which will talk to your coffee pot, which will wake you up in the morning and get the whole thing organized. I think the range of opportunity for creativity in computer documentation and really that kind of technical information production is just huge. It's huge.
At the heart of the best documentation is usability research and testing. Usability testing is when technical communicators test their designs, software, or documentation. The technical communicator must know how to design the best usability tests and questions so that the communicator's product is centered around the user.
Usability research really tries to inform design with knowledge about users so that the product is user-centered from the beginning. And to do that, you do contextual research of various kinds. And then after you've formulated a prototype based on what you learned, then you can do a usability test to refine the design. To me, the user interface is a very elaborate message from the designer to the user. The designer had some idea of what the user was trying to do, and built a tool that presumably will do that, but that has to be explained to the user, and that act of presenting the product functionality is, to me, another form of communication that requires exactly the same sort of skills that our students develop in their coursework. And so I think that there's a natural affinity between technical communicators and user interface designers. Technical communication is professional education. And so we're training people to be professionals. We're educating professionals to enter the workplace to do a specific kind of work. Well, what will they do? They will design communication. So they'll use everything they learn about how people communicate, and about audience analysis, and about task analysis, and about analyzing a communication situation. And then they'll use all that they know to come up with the most effective design for the communication, for the situation that they can imagine.
Science writing, because it is not seen as similar to technical communication, is often not included in technical writing programs. An exception is the University of Washington.
Well, you know, historically, science writing has not really been encompassed in most technical communication programs. But what we've seen happening with the advent of the World Wide Web is that technical communication professionals these days find themselves engaged in the design of communications for general audiences and for the media, because they are developing materials to place on the web about advances in science and technology that are aimed at telling journalists and telling the world about the new developments going on. And so what we've seen is this blurring of the line between traditional science journalism and technical communication. And so there's a great need today for people who have very strong writing skills coupled with a great technical background that can design communication materials for journalists, for general audiences. And so to address that need, what we've done at the University of Washington is to create a science writing pathway within the department.
So far, we've met technical communicators, examined the history of technical communication, and looked at the various aspects and wealth of opportunities inside the field. In the second half of Exploring Technical Communication, we're going to look at some publications produced by technical communicators. We'll look at the professional organizations, and we'll also look at the exciting opportunities available at the University of Washington, the internship and international programs. Finally, we'll look to the future of the profession, and by the end of this study, have a decisive answer to our question, what is technical communication? So let's start by examining the publications produced by technical communicators.
It's a regional magazine, and so by that I mean it covers news in Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, Alaska, and British Columbia, so the 5 states and 1 province of the greater Pacific Northwest. So that means that it is a journalistic format. It is a regional news publication, which means we have news stories, feature stories, and it goes to some 28,000 readers throughout that whole region and nationwide, because many of our readers actually are all across the country. So our audience for the magazine includes not only members of the high-tech associations in our region, but also legislators, members of the news media. It goes to university faculty, high school science teachers, middle school science teachers, and just anybody who's interested who picks up a copy on the newsstand. I want to add that, you know, Northwest Science and Technology magazine to date has been about 50 to 80% of that content has been generated by student writers at the University of Washington.
PostCom is the department's annual magazine, and it's kind of 2 purposes. One of them is it's supposed to give students an experience on working with a magazine, and second is it's a news piece. So the alumni of the department can keep up with the news, what's new in the department, and related organizations like other departments in TC, they can find out what we're doing at the UW?
It really tells the story of what's going on in the department. And the students design the look and feel of it. The students organize themselves. They create a story list identifying all the things going on in the department. They go out and interview everybody. They write the stories. They create the graphics. They take the pictures. They write the thing. They put it together. They create the deliverable, which is a CD that goes over to publication services, and they coordinate the printing of it.
STC runs 2 journals. One of them is called Intercom, and it's mostly about practical issues for pragmatic, working technical communicators. They also have a more scholarly journal, which is called Technical Communication. And in last September of 2000, actually a year ago, the issue from Technical Communication was called Web Heuristics. And perhaps coincidentally, every one of the articles was authored or co-authored by faculty in our department. The issue shows a lot of the specialty that a lot of people in our department have in online and new media communication. The issue is actually available online. You can access all the articles online if you're an SDC member. I recommend it highly. I enjoyed reading the articles. I was a new faculty member in September 2000, so I'm not actually in the articles, so you know that I can be completely impartial and objective.
Many writers that write for publications attend the conferences put on by the organizations like Society for Technical Communication. At an STC conference, you can expect to network with other technical communicators, read publications, watch current presentations, and keep up with the trends in the field.
STC is the international organization of technical communicators, and the Region 7 is the western states, and we're having a regional conference to share information about the profession. Networking is the best way to find work, in my opinion. Professional organizations is the best way to find a network. So I'm a big believer in that.
The Technical Communication Department at the University of Washington offers students the opportunity to study in the Netherlands through the University of Twente.
Right before I became chair, we had a visiting professor from the University of Twente in the Netherlands, Dr. Thea van der Geest, who's going to be here again, actually at the end of next month for 6 months. And she was a really interesting, wonderful person to have around. We spent a lot of time talking, and we basically dreamed up this international relationship with her department. And that was in, gosh, what was it in? 97, I guess, 96 or 97. And we started off by having a student exchange program, which continues every spring, and sometimes not exactly spring, we have a student exchange.
Another great opportunity to increase one's knowledge is the Internship Program overseen by Tom Williams at the University of Washington.
As a graduation requirement, every undergraduate has to spend a period of time working in industry. Local companies are aware of our program, are aware of the quality of our students, and we generally get more calls asking for students than we have students to send out. And most of them say that they really think it's a wonderful way to cap off their experience here by actually going out and seeing if they can apply their skills in a real work situation.
An undergraduate looking to the future of his or her career wonders about things like, what kind of job will I get, or how much money will I make? The future of technical communication looks bright, and those asking questions about technical communication say, what will the tools be that technical communicators use, or what new design theories will surface?
The thing that impresses me is the number of people who are in the student body of this department. We started out with 10 or 12, and they weren't sure what they were getting into. I had a music major, and I'm not quite sure why she came in, but she turned out to become an editor for the Schirmer Music Library years later. I lost track of her. I wish I hadn't. But 10 to 12 people. Now we talk about students in the certificate program and the master's programs and so on. you're talking in terms of hundreds.
Well, long-term prognosticators are painting very, very rosy pictures for this profession.
Generally, I think you need to be as much of a specialist as you're going to write about that specialty, his or her specialty, and that related to the kind of audience you're trying to reach.
Really, what we are doing is making information accessible to people in the form in which they need to use it. And typically we are using technology to accomplish that goal. Either technology in the sense of production technology or in the sense of the actual delivery medium. You also need to understand that communication needs are really a function of what a person already knows, what they're trying to do, the circumstance they're in, their frame of mind, their attitude, who they are as a person. And you have to be able to craft a communication that speaks to them.
In our quest to answer the question, what is technical communication, we have examined the history of technical communication. We have met a few of the technical communicators. We've analyzed the profession. And we've learned that it's more than just technical writing. It's also visual communication, new media research, new media design. It's technical documentation. It's persuasive language, and a host of others. We've examined its publications, organizations, international and internship programs, and found that technical communication is dynamic and varied. In looking to the future, realize that it will be technical communicators who will be communicating our future to the rest of humankind. This has been Eric Willis, your technical communicator and fellow explorer. Thank you for watching.
Technically, I was communicating with you, darling. Though I don't remember quite what words I used. Say you don't want to hear my rhetoric this morning. Won't you let me persuade you to my point of view? Here we go. I'm gonna straighten my head, give me a demarcation, get my imagination into. Tomorrow I search for that short bus to school. If I jump on that wagon, I'll jump for you. That's right.